Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session here at the Georgia Department of Education Community for Music Technology. I'm super excited to be bringing us session 6 for this school year. I'm really excited about the opportunity that we have here to learn from David Thomas. He's a good friend of mine, teaching music technology here in the state of Georgia. And I recently learned of some stuff that he did in his classroom and did some graduate research work on. And that was infusing hip hop music and the understanding of hip hop music into the music technology curriculum in his school. And I thought what he did was fantastic. I've been edging into this myself based on the stuff that I learned from him. So I'm really excited to have David here with us today to help guide all of us through a little bit of this. We are going to really dive into, like I said, this hip hop music curriculum idea. But David, why do you think that this is such an important thing for us to look at as music technology teachers?
Sure. Well, the impetus was for looking at something that the students would respond to that would touch on the culturally relevant response of pedagogy. That is a big deal right now. It's kind of a buzzword. And just exploring hip hop music through that, through the lens of technology, but also through the culturally responsive lens as well. So that was kind of what the impetus was for it. And some of the research that I looked at was, and just to keep it brief, specifically, Adam Cruz did some research and he identified four principles of hip hop culture that I really used for the framework of this particular unit plan, which was number one, keep it real, which had to do with authenticity. Number two, flip the script using existing materials in new ways. And number three, make some noise, engage in active music making. And number four, stay fresh, be aware of current trends and practices. So that really was the impetus for this particular unit. And Cruz argues that adopting these principles would keep music classrooms relevant to student interests, focus on connections to both local and global contexts, and take and transform musical ideas and create original music with an environment that honors the musical traditions for what they are and remains flexible and responsive to the students as well, really, this was really a student focused unit.
Yeah, I can totally dig that. What do you really think relates this to music technology so well, as opposed to, say, band, chorus, orchestra, those types of things?
So additional research, and this several different researchers would suggest to us that there are 70 to 80% of our students in our classrooms that are not in a traditional, I'll use air quotes for traditional music ensemble, be it band, chorus, or orchestra. That there's 70 to 80% of our students in the general student body that are now not in those ensembles. So these are ways to reach that other 70 to 80% of students that would never possibly be in a traditional performance ensemble like band, orchestra, or chorus. So that was another aspect of this that was very interesting to me. And as I teach music technology, which is considered a general music course in Georgia, um, the technology aspect just is used in the hip hop genre. There's a lot of technology used, particularly in that genre, rather than just traditional instruments. There are voice or things like that.
Have you found that you get a fair amount of student engagement and buy-in into this concept?
Oh, absolutely. There was like when I even introduced it as a concept to the students that we're going to take 5 to 6 weeks to work on and study, get a little deeper dive into hip hop music. There was like an immediate buzz in the classroom, and there was an excitement there that maybe was a little higher degree than it normally is. So yeah, there was a definite buzz about that in the classroom and excitement to do this study.
have would you identify yourself before diving into this as being a solid hip hop fan, or is this something that you kind of had to go out and learn on your own? And if you
Yeah,
did you find it accessible enough that you could engage with it yourself?
sure. And that's a great question. I think obviously you have to have a foot in that a little bit just to be yourself, which is the first concept, to be authentic. You have to know a little bit about it, I think. So I did, going back to, the 80s and when I was in high school and just the beginning of how that worked, with just like disco. Hip hop originated from disco. People will point to Rapper's Delight was one of the early songs, and that used Good Times, like a sample, part of the instrumental break from Good Times was used as part of that. So, that having that background from really being exposed to it, even when I was in high school, back when hip hop first became sort of a thing, really did help. And it was a link that I was able to use to the students that even brought in my old 12-inch record of Rapper's Delight and showed them, here it is. This is the original 12-inch, 12-inch LP that they used to spin and scratch and all that good stuff with. So it was helpful to have that link with them and with hip hop music.
So, would you say that that bond between you and the students became almost instant in your classroom with that?
Yeah, I think that it gave me a little bit of maybe a legitimacy and an authenticity because they thought, okay, well, here this guy was really around when all of this started, so he can maybe give us some insight into how that looked. We're in high school. He was in high school, so how does that, what history can he get us? The first thing we discussed was history, the history of hip hop. So that was a way to get started and link my background with that growing up and just being exposed to hip hop, the whole movement as it has birthed back in the 80s through today, how it's really become, as we talk about it in the unit, a way of life. Really, I think it's a culture, it's a way of life, a lifestyle.
For sure. Now, just so the listeners here and viewers understand, can you just describe like what your daily schedule is? How long are your class blocks? Is it year long, stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah, my particular at our school is it's a year long course, 2 semesters. So we go the whole 180 days of school. Um, and I teach three periods of music technology and 2 periods of class piano. Obviously, the class piano doesn't do this, but the music technology did.
So how long are your class periods?
About 50 minutes on the normal day, and then we have a block day on 2 days a week, an A and a B block, which is a 90-minute class. So I see these kids basically two 50-minute periods, a block period, and then we end up on Friday with another 50-minute period.
Okay, I was just trying to get perspective for that 6 to 8 weeks. Like when you're talking about dedicating this amount of time. I teach on a 90 minute, so I'm just like culminating inside myself. That'd be more like a 3 week uh, unit, moving pretty fast through some of the stuff, and just trying to get that idea of about how long out of your curriculum you dedicate to this. And really 6 weeks out of the entire school year, that's a pretty significant chunk. um but if it's something the students are engaged in, then I think you've got something going. Now, in that broad 36-week window of the entire school year, about where does this fall in the pattern for you?
Yeah, I've done it at different times. I've done it a couple of years now. I did it before Christmas one time, just to not be in the holiday. And then I did it at the very beginning of the calendar year, like a January, February thing, to not be backing up into spring break or, having spring break interrupted. So yeah, but it is, I mean, you make a good point that 6 weeks is a significant chunk of time to discuss this particular topic. However, what I found is that I can kind of wedge in, other things that I want to cover, such as form or things like that, more musical things. And the students seem to be more apt to hear me on that when it was related to hip hop. If I put form on hip hop and showed how that works, they're like, oh, okay, I get that. And I actually could use that in my own compositions and my own. Everybody wants to be a producer. When I'm producing stuff, I can use that in my own producing. So it was a pretty cool link to be able to sneak, kind of a classical music education into the hip hop realm, which was just kind of interesting to do that.
Fantastic. What would kind of the last thing to sum this up, what would be some necessary skills that the students would need to be able to launch into the units that we're going to describe later here?
Yeah, they're going to definitely basically need, the basics of using a DAW, a digital audio workstation of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to one particular kind of DAW, but they need to have some basis of functioning with just the basics of that before they dive into this, because it does get a little deeper into a little more technologically advanced things that they need to know the basics for before they dive into this. Otherwise, you're going to turn into teaching more of the advanced concepts, and it's going to make your your hip hop unit will last way more than 6 weeks if you're having to teach, the basics of how to use a DAW and record using a mic and stuff like that to record samples and things like that. So yeah, there needs to be a basis before they start this, for
So
sure.
you've already talked to them about how to build like drum sequences and have you done chord progressions yet? Have you done melodies yet? Like,
No, this is very basic. It didn't dive that quite deep. We do talk about form. We talk about recording. They're using loops a lot, which is just to keep it basic and simple. So they're not doing to have to do a super deep dive in the technology side or even the musical side, but using this kind of as a bridge. I use it as a really a culturally responsive bridge to link into their world. They can relate to me. And then even after we're finished with this unit, they're like, okay, this guy does know what he's talking about. He can relate to us on a different level, on a culturally responsive level. And now they're more willing to go with me to maybe some more traditional music places, like, and they get interested in that. How do you build a bass line? How do I have a better melody? What chords can I use to do this and make it better and more improved? So yeah, but this is kind of like the background to that. It's a starting point. I've used it as a starting point to just have a more authentic relationship with them where there is trust and they're like really willing to follow me wherever I want to take them after this, because we've had that familiarity of hip hop music, which is something a lot of the kids, most of the kids really are into exploring more in a deeper level.
that's awesome, man. That's so good to hear, and I like knowing, like, about where you put that in. That really gives me good perspective where I would wanna add that into my classroom. Well, stay with
Sure.
us, come back for session number 2, which will be posted here in probably another couple days or so, and we'll learn more about the actual lessons and curriculum that David used to be able to bring his hip hop lessons to life. See you soon.